ready to create riches in your work and life? It's time for Shedding the Bitch Radio and TV, where you can discuss, debate, and get advice on how to discover and shed the bitches of fear, insecurity, self-doubt, and negativity, so you can realize your dreams and life purpose, and create and accelerate the riches in life you deserve. So let's welcome your qualifier host, Bernadette Boas.
Welcome, everyone. How are you? And welcome to Shedding the Bitch Radio. Yes, I'm Bernadette Boas, and today is our Ask Me Anything episode, which is a lot of fun. Basically, the first Tuesday of every month. Throughout the month, I'm collecting your questions and your stories, and maybe some challenges that you're having, maybe opportunities that you just need some insight and guidance on, and I bring them right here into our Shedding the Bitch radios and TV. Ask Me Anything episode. So we have a number of questions that we're going to go over today. I'll give you a highlight of them. And at any time, I'm actually live. I'm live on Blog Talk Radio. I'm live in our Shedding the Bitch Facebook page. I'm live out on our Shedding the Bitch TV YouTube channel and even LinkedIn. So at any point in time, if you have a question, feel free to post it. You can even call me directly at 1-818-572-2910 should you want to talk to me directly. And we'll make it all work. All right. But the questions we're going to talk about today, in no particular order, is someone wants to know, actually, Jackie wants to know about a website that she is contemplating either replacing her website or modifying the one that she has, and she's not really sure what she needs to be looking for in a website developer. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about a situation that hopefully not many coaches and consultants deal with out there, but Barbara has a client who she's been working with for about 3 months, I believe she said, and the client is asking for a refund. And we're going to get into that. I have some of the details from Barbara, but we'll get into some of the more details around that and some tips and some suggestions. And then Paula wants to know how to overcome stage fright, but more so in even the smallest of settings. So if you can relate to any of these questions, plus if you have a question of your own, then definitely be sure to reach out and let me see what I can do to help you with that. Okay. And I'll be going back and forth between the channels. Excuse me. I have, I've lost my paperwork. And I'll go back and forth to make sure that I'm paying attention and I see any of the comments or the needs that you might be having within your own business or life. Okay. All right. So first, before we get started in regards to your questions, let me just do a few thank yous if I could. I need to thank our new and ongoing viewers and listeners. It's the ongoing that we've had for a good number of years who are sharing and tweeting and commenting and reviewing and rating and subscribing to our podcast on any one of your streaming services, including right here on Blog Talk Radio, or you're subscribing to our Shedding the Bitch TV channel on YouTube. But you also might be a member of our Facebook Shedding the Bitch page or Twitter page. So wherever you might be getting your audio broadcast, your podcast, or your TV episode, I appreciate you leaving comments and ratings and reviews, so forth and so on. At the same time, you are leaving suggestions on topics and on the experts that we bring into the program on a weekly basis. So continue doing that. But thank you so much, because we are looking to continue to grow our fellowship. And with your support and with your help, we are doing that, and I couldn't be more honored. I also need to thank a couple of our sponsors. I need to thank NG Tax Solutions, who is a full-service financial and tax services company, and they serve small to corporate-sized clients all over the country in whatever needs that you have. They also serve individuals for their tax and finance needs as well. So Debbie Snelling and her team are just fabulous, and they've been a longtime sponsor of everything we do here in the Shedding the Bitch community. So please go to ngtaxsolutions.com to learn more about that and tell her I said hi. And then a newest in the last couple of weeks is a local here in Atlanta, Georgia, but at the same time, you need to know about him and his team. It is Up Top Roofing Company of Atlanta, and they are just absolutely fabulous. And he's been a follower and a listener to the Shedding the Bitch community for the past, I would say, 5 or 6 years, and came to me and said, I want to support you. I want to sponsor you. And so I couldn't be more proud to have Up Top Roofing of Atlanta joining as a sponsor. You can reach out to Jay and his team at up-top roofing of ATL at yahoo.com. All right. Okay, let's get into your questions, shall we? I'm going to take a look around just to make sure we don't have any others happening on any of the other networks. And I don't have Deborah with me today. So bear with me as I make sure that we have all of our bases covered. But we're going to first get into this question in regards to stage fright. So, how many of you might deal with it yourself? And it doesn't even necessarily mean stage fright and the anxiety that comes along with it isn't necessarily just linked to a big stage or you doing public speaking. It could be when you're out in a social gathering. It could be when you're job interviewing. It could be when you're in the middle of maybe a conference and they open up the room to questions and you're, needing to raise your hand. Stage fright can come in many, many forms, big or small. And at the same time, that anxiety, both physically and emotionally, can be very debilitating. At the same time, there's some that just kind of get very jittery and very anxious. I know for myself, and then I'll get into answering Paula's question, but I know for myself, I used to suffer from this significantly. And, people would always look at me thinking, oh, well, she's so outgoing and gregarious, and she always appears very confident. And yet, I would say even up until about 8 years ago, I was doing public speaking. I was doing, presentations in front of rooms. I was in conferences raising my hand. At the same time, that total dry throat, breaking out in a rash, being jittery, being all in my head, going blank at times. I certainly have experienced it all. So I definitely related to what Paula was asking about. And I'm sure many of you might actually, deal with it yourself. And so if I can provide you any type of insights and tips, then I'm really happy to do that. Now, keep in mind too, if you have stage fright in any form, you're not alone. It used to be, people would say, oh, it's like 99% of people will say that stage fright is their number one fear. It actually over the years has kind of pivoted and adjusted. And the latest is around 73% find any type of public speaking or any type of presentation, skill is frightening. It, leads to anxiety, 73%. So that's a good chunk of those individuals, and probably has a lot to do with what's happened over the last couple of years, because so many of us, a good majority of us, have had to pivot from, being kind of in our offices, doing our own thing, to going online. And this is a form of presentation, speaking, definitely an area where people gain a lot of fear and anxiety and stress when it comes to getting on video, when it comes to putting a microphone in front of them. So, I'm glad to see, though, that so many have taken on this form of education and entertainment, to where the numbers have come, down greatly to just 73%, but that's still high. And so we definitely want to work on it. I want you to kind of keep in mind a few things, Paula, and anyone else that deals with stage fright. And again, it could come in the form of just small anxiety. And oftentimes people will tell you that, those butterflies in your stomach right before, you're going to go and get on a stage or have a microphone in your face or have a camera in your face. Those are actually more energy and more positive than they are, negative and stress and anxiety. I don't know about you. But I used to get the butterflies in my stomach all the time. And trust me when I say they weren't good butterflies, they were nauseous and anxious butterflies. I'll even remember Barbara Streisand. And if there's one person on this earth that I just absolutely adore and I could get, starstruck from, it's Barbara Streisand. And I'll never forget when she was interviewed a good number of years ago now, but she would talk about just how debilitating it was, the thought of her going out on stage and performing on stage. And I just found that absolutely stunning, absolutely stunning. And then at the same time, people were sharing with me over the last 25, 30 years that, anything with a microphone in my hand, that would be very natural for me. That would be very easy. That would be very comfortable. And I was like, yeah, no. So anyway, so here are some things that I want you to be thinking about and considering. Is one, just know that, and keep in mind that 73%. Just know that if you are on a stage or you are on camera or you are on a radio show with a microphone in your face, a vast majority of people would never consider doing it. And so you're in kind of a small percent that is open and courageous and willing even to push through their anxiety and their stage fright to do what you need to do because it's important and you're making a difference. So just kind of hold on to that. It would be my first tip, is just to hold on to that idea that you're doing something that many people will not do. And at the same time, the second thing I would want you to be thinking about is, as others are observing or listening, they're sitting there going and saying to themselves, I would never do that. And they're kind of applauding your courage. They're applauding your, guts to get up there and do what you're doing. So, kind of take both of those perceptions, your own perception that you're in a small percent, and then the persons who are listening or watching you, they're not seeing if you're anxious. They're not looking for whether or not you have beads of sweat running down your face or that you're dry and you're, kind of having a hard time, getting the words out. They're not looking for rashes on your chest. That's all your head game, because they're looking for you. It's because you took that courage and that gut. They're just looking for you to give them whatever it is that they, showed up to hear or to see or to learn or whatever the case might be. So just be comfortable in the idea that you're one in a million, one in a few, and that people are kind of looking to you or listening toward you in order to learn or grow or make a change, whatever the case might be. All right. So those are just a couple of more, conceptual, perceptional type of tips that you can kind of hang on so you can believe in yourself enough to where then you're not uncomfortable with it. All right. And that brings me to my 5 Ps. And I use this across the board with for an overall general communications. It could be, I even use it when I talk to clients about selling. But the 5 Ps is very applicable in many ways. And the 5 Ps are plan, prepare, present. I'm sorry, I'm missing something. Plan, prepare, practice. I missed practice. Plan, prepare, practice, present, and process. And the practice piece of all of that is really critical. So the plan, obviously, plan, and that'll make you feel more comfortable and confident. Prepare, meaning now that you've gotten maybe a plan laid out, now you want to prepare what it is that you're going to be presenting or speaking about or educating or interviewing, whatever the case might be. And you're now getting, kind of more comfortable and more knowledgeable about the actual content that you would be talking about. And then you want to practice. And this is where I want to emphasize practice, 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 and practice. Because the more times that you get in front of a microphone, whether that's on a stage, behind a computer, in a classroom, the more comfortable you're going to get. Because guess what? You are going to probably fumble. You're going to probably, get stressed out and anxious. You're going to maybe forget things. You're going to maybe, kind of flop in some cases. But each one of those experiences shouldn't pull you down. They should lift you up. So you get to the point where you're more and more and more comfortable. And I'll remember specifically when I was presenting to a relatively large group, a relatively large group of people. It was at a business networking event. And it was for a particular global organization that had a chapter here in Atlanta. And there I was. And at first, kind of, that normal, butterflies in the stomach, little hives on my chest, though maybe no one else noticed, the dry throat. And as I'm presenting and as I'm up in front of all of these people, and somewhat in my head, all of a sudden, everything just disappeared. I call it shedding in a lot of cases, but all of a sudden, everything disappeared. And I realized afterwards, when I really thought about, okay, what changed, to the point where I never feared and I never got anxious again. And I never got in my head again. But what was it? And it ties back to practicing. It tied back to the fact that I had done that particular presentation so often, so many times, in various formats, in various ways, in various size of audiences, that I knew it kind of became part of me. And therefore, I was able to relax and lean into it, as opposed to kind of be in my head about it. And so practice, Paula, as much as you can when it comes to overcoming your stage fright. All right. And then I want to break down practice into two parts. Practice on your own. And I'll never forget, I used to take a improv class and a acting class and then a comedy class. And they all had a same tip. And that was, if you're working to memorize, now improv, you don't, but if you're working to memorize or get comfortable with content, then, move at the same time. So walk at the same time you're trying to memorize something. Walk at the same time you're trying to kind of formulate, your messaging. And so I would go down to Piedmont Park. I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia. I'd go down to Piedmont Park and I would, have my outline. And in one case, it was a script. And I would just walk in circles while I'm memorizing my lines. And, maybe some people in the park thought I was a lunatic, but at the same time, it really does help you to not only memorize it, but actually kind of embed it into your being. So definitely practice. Now, being that I touched on acting classes and whatnot, the last tip, Paula, would be, look into other types of edutainment, I'll call it, education, entertainment. So like I mentioned, I took a comedy class. It involved writing and then, performing. I have taken improv classes. I've taken acting, like formal, like a play type of acting classes. I've been part of Toastmasters. I've been part of the National Speakers Association, or NSA, where they also have programs that kind of walk you through creating your presentation all the way to practicing it and then getting on a stage and presenting it. So there's a lot of different forms for you to be able to get over stage fright. All right. I hope that answered your question. If anybody else has any questions in regards to that, you can leave comments. You can on any one of the platforms that we're broadcasting, as well as you can reach out to me on Facebook, LinkedIn, or you can just email me at Bernadette Boas at ballofireinc.com. Okay. All right. So our next question would be from Barbara in regards to a coaching client. And so let me make one little switch up here and make sure I have what I need for her. So the situation was, she has a 6-month program. It is a combination of one-on-one, but primarily like you get like one-on-one, and then the rest of it is group coaching large group coaching. And so she had been working with this client for about 3 months in this group, and then with the one-on-one. The one-on-one might have been one a month. And then all of a sudden, 3 months into the 6, she got a call from one of her clients in that group asking for a refund. And it caught her very much off guard. And so she didn't feel that she handled the initial conversation very well, and basically did whatever she can to get off the phone, and then reached out to me. And so asking kind of, what do I do in that type of situation? Well, the first thing for any coaches, consultants, service providers, anyone that would have these type of arrangements, longer term arrangements with a customer or client, you need to get anything and everything down in writing into an agreement, a contract, whatever you want to call it, and make sure that it's, not only airtight as far as it lays out everything about the conditions and the terms and the duration and what's expected and can they expect, but what do you expect from them? Just making sure that all that details laid out, because if Barbara had it laid out, then she would have had something to refer to answer the question that her client was asking her. However, she has a coaching agreement. It doesn't speak to refunds. And because she just automatically assumed that her programs would be non-refundable, which is perfectly fine. However, you want to get that language and that verbiage in writing, and that's part of your onboarding or even your closing of that customer, and they're reading it and agreeing to it, and therefore signing it, and then therefore they're bound by that agreement. So the first thing, just looking at things business-wise and logically, it all comes down to detail. It all comes down to terms and agreements, and what did you have in place in order for this person to understand what their rights are and what they could be expecting should they decide to, kind of terminate an agreement prior to it ending. Now, the next level of that, though, gets into more the person and the actual coaching itself, the actual partnership outside the kind of legal jargon, business contract aspects. Because the first thing I asked was, although she hung up the phone very quickly, there had to have some degree of conversation, as opposed to her just hanging up the phone, which she didn't do. And I would propose no one do that. Kind of, this is a time where if something is thrown at you that quickly, suddenly, unexpectedly, this is when you definitely need to just ground yourself from a mindset perspective and breathing perspective. So mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, just get yourself grounded and have a conversation. Like, make it a conversation. Don't get defensive. You don't want to get emotional about it. You want to just, especially if you are a coach, you just want to start peppering this individual with questions. So give me an idea. What's going on? What's happening? Has something changed over the last, couple of weeks, months, even maybe days? Has something all of a sudden changed? The first things that I asked Barbara was, on a regular basis, it might not be weekly or whatever the frequency of when she would meet with this individual, whether it's one-on-one or group, but more so, frequently, do you touch base on whether or not, she's gaining value, she's getting benefit, she's comfortable, she's getting what she needs, expectations of the program are being met? Are there those frequent questions to ensure that you have a pulse on exactly what is your customer's experience with you during your program, or an event, or a more, consulting contract perspective? You definitely always want to be monitoring the customer's results, the customer satisfaction of what it is you're delivering on. You don't want to be surprised at the end, or in this case, the middle, to where all of a sudden, someone's raising up concerns or issues or missed expectation. And so there, those were a number of questions that I asked Barbara to consider and to kind of then go back to this individual to learn more. So she also wants to really understand what is going on with this individual, because, there might be something in there that is new or sudden or hasn't been addressed. That can be. So it doesn't have to be an end all that, she wants a refund. That means it's over. It could be the fact that it's a call for help and it's a call for attention on whatever it is that she's dealing with. So you definitely want to, get into what is driving this decision, what is driving this sudden, disruption or, pulling out of a program that you invested in. Is there things that we should just adjust and adapt and pivot? Is this calling out a different business issue or personal issue that we should be addressing, and maybe, kind of making an exception to however you might have your program structured so I can support you? Is it that all of a sudden maybe she came into a significant major financial situation and she just can't afford to continue? But Barbara had not gotten into depth of questions to kind of really understand the situation. And so fortunately, she did reach out and we were able to talk about it so she can go back to this individual and effectively talk through it. The one thing that I really want to point out, and I made sure Barbara looked at herself before she even spoke to the client, was, were the expectations of whatever it is that you laid out, were they being delivered? Were they being met? Were you keeping the promise or the commitment that you made around what it is this program or service is supposed to be delivering, or this product is supposed to be delivering? Because there would be, a significant reason why someone 3 months in of 6 months would all of a sudden, kind of put the brakes on everything. And so any one of you out there, coach, consultant, service provider, would definitely want to be looking at kind of internally yourself, individually, your program, products, and services. And then, kind of the business agreements and contracts and terms, and then the client. And in the client, you need to then ask a lot of questions to really understand what the current situation is. Now, if Barbara had very clear terms and agreements within her contracts, then that would have immediately said, well, Barbara, you signed this agreement that says there's no refunds. Or that there is a refund, but it's, significantly reduced. However you might handle someone possibly asking for a refund. Then I kind of summed it up with asking her this. First, before I get there, I then also said, okay, so are there considerations that, both of you can make in order to effectively come to a decision as to where you're going to go next with your relationship, with your partnership, with the program? So what I meant by that is, if this individual, just has to get out, you might say, well, I would be open, if you would, to providing a testimonial, even a video testimonial, or, some type of review or some type of content that I could be using to, promote this program and to, advance this program going forward, in exchange to giving you a refund, even if you had, your contracts even say refunds are not accepted. So there's things that you can, really make sure that you can work with and consider with your client, just so you kind of can maintain that relationship, maintain that partnership. Because again, you really might never figure out what's actually happening. And it could be that, they return 6 months later, a year later, and then you'll even know better and more about what it is you need to put in your agreements for that individual, doesn't mean you have to cut them off permanently. Um, and then again, I then had her consider, how important is it that you don't have a disgruntled um, client should you say there's no refunds, and you just kind of lay it out like that. Now, I'm not talking about something that would cost minimals amount of money, and it would not have a big impact on you, but it could on them. I'm talking about these bigger investments that individuals make in coaches and consultants, in service providers. But how important is it for you to kind of maintain that relationship with this individual? That might drive to what you decide as far as, do I, provide some form of a refund or some form of something in consideration of her request, or do I just leave it as, hopefully what your agreement states. Now, the other thing for all of you online course providers and pretty much like DIY type of programs and offerings, where it's all your IP is put out there, maybe trickled out on a weekly basis, monthly basis, over a period of months. What you also want to look at when it comes to refunds, and a situation like Barbara has, is the fact that um, if they have any of your IP, meaning that like the next 3 months of IP, they already bought the first 3 months. Let's look at it that way. They already bought the first 3 months of IP, but if there's, available to them all 6 months of your IP, and now they're asking for a refund, that I would get a little bit stricter on, because there's a cost to your IP. Now you might say, well, they can't do anything with it, on their own. Again, it's your IP, and there's a lot of things people can do with someone's, intellectual property. So I would, kind of lean on that. If you did open up to where someone can access all the programs, intellectual property and assets throughout their program that they purchased, that would be a whole different decision you might make as far as a refund or not. Because there's many programs out there that if she's only paid for 3 of 6, well, then, the 3 months is done and paid for, and she hasn't accessed anything and nothing's been available to her for the following last 3 months. Okay, makes sense? And again, you can always reach out to me at Bernadette Boas at ballofireinc.com if you have further questions in regards to that. Okay, let me just take a glance around. All right. So then our last question was about that we have so far. But again, you can always, call into me at 1-818-572-2910 while I am live. And or if you go out onto Facebook or into on Facebook, you're going to see the StreamYard live broadcast. You can comment there. Out on our YouTube channel, Shedding the Bitch TV on YouTube. Or again, go right into blogtalkradio.com if you're listening to it, and you can scroll down. There's a chat function right there, and I can see your questions. Or you can call 1-818-572-2910. Shedding the Bitch Radio and TV is brought to you by Ball of Fire Coaching, that serves female coaches, consultants, and service providers who are struggling to break through the money and time ceiling and get clients in the door and money in the bank. And so they can create riches in their work and their life. So you can always check us out at balloffirecoaching.com. All right, let me just grab a drink. And our last question is around website development. Excuse me. So Jackie reached out and she asked about the fact that she didn't say if she was revamping or wanting a whole new website. She just asked, What do I look for when it comes to a website developer? And so the first question that you're going to want to look at is whether or not you're doing a new website or you're going to revamp your website. And why I say that is because not all website developers are the same. And I would certainly, if I was revamping, I would certainly want to make sure that someone is astute enough and creative enough to leverage what already exists and yet bring it up to date, not just technically, not just feature function, not just the version of the website, but the look and the feel and the navigation and the imaging and the fonts and the branding, all of those things. Versus someone who's doing it from scratch is also a whole different set of questions that you're going to want to look at when you are interviewing and qualifying website developers. They're not all the same, and you definitely will get what you pay for. So I'm not saying that you have to spend outrageous amounts of money. At the same time, this is not an area necessarily that you want to nickel and dime. Okay. And keep in mind, coaches, consultants, and service providers, you're entrepreneurs, you're CEOs of a business. And at times you need to invest. You need to circulate that monies that you're earning, that you're gaining, that you're saving, and you need to make investments in your business. And on your website, you absolutely need to look at it as an investment and make sure that you are doing the due diligence to identify the right person to work with. So let's talk about revamping first and why I think that's kind of different. Because again, it's not that it's different, but you might find someone who is, really good, even master, at taking someone's website and, because maybe these are cost conscious individuals, businesses, and they just want someone to revamp what they have. And again, that takes kind of creativity, that takes willingness to do it, because many don't want to touch other people's websites. I had that issue a good number of years ago. Is I reached out to a number of website developers, and they didn't want to be responsible in touching my website and possibly breaking things that were there. Now, my situation, and this was with sheddingthebitch.com, my situation was the developer had hard coded a lot of my WordPress site. Therefore, I couldn't even make changes. They wanted to kind of control and manage it. That would be a really good question to ask. It's certainly a lesson I learned, is you definitely want to ask, are you going to have full control and, capability and management of your site, or does it need to be managed by a third party? What percentage do you want it to be managed by somebody else or yourself? And I will acknowledge that at the time, I was delegating everything. I was like, I do not want to manage it. I do not want to be the one creating it. And yet I didn't say, so hard code everything. And that's where communication is vital with service providers such as website developers. They're very good at what they do. Sometimes they're so good that, they take it upon themselves to do things thinking it's in the best interest of their customer. They're not doing it maliciously. At the same time, it may not meet your needs. So you want to be sitting down and drafting a whole slew of questions that you're going to discuss with anybody. And you're always going to want to get multiple proposals. But going back to revamping, so you want someone who can work with your structure that you have, while making recommendations of what might be, the latest features and functions and navigations and flows to a website that you might want to consider for your revamped one. And then, you want to ask, simple questions, although they may not be simple to most, in regards to what are you required to provide versus what are they automatically able to go and do. So there's new plugins, there's new widgets. I'm not a website guru in any way, shape, or form. I've just had enough experience on my own over the last 12 years. So you really just want to understand, okay, from a revamping perspective, what is it I need to provide you? What are you going to be able to do on your own? You all either revamped or new, you want to kind of design and lay out what it is you need from your website. You might not be the, one kind of designing exactly where they're going to go and exactly how they're going to be presented. But at the same time, you need to say, okay, I need a contact form. I need a blog. I need a place for my podcast. Now, with podcasts and videos and those type of things, then there's conversations that you need to make sure that your website developer prospect is asking around, okay, so how many of your podcast episodes do you want to bring over? How many videos are you going to want to bring over or have? Because all of that, the storage is a huge, huge element today versus 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So you just want to really kind of lead what it is that you need from your website individual, and then ask them, all the questions in regards to it. How can you make it look and feel and touch and do, all of these things that I need? How long is it going to take? How much does the storage or the movement or the actual extraction of content, how does that impact the scope of the project, even the price of the project? So that's kind of revamping. When it comes to you doing a new one, the first thing I told Jackie was, when I gave her both ideas, is I said, well, first go and research 10, 15 like websites. Meaning if you are a coach, say you're a money coach, say you're not only a coach, but you have a book, you have a podcast, you do evergreen online course products versus live products, meaning live launches or live coaching, so forth and so on. So, you want to look at a good 10, 12, 15 other sites and really pull down. You should have a journal that's just about your website design. And you should make notes of what you like, what you don't like, kind of what was that website or multiple website domains that I can use as examples and provide this website developer, pretty much for 100% of what it is you want this website to look like. But then you're hoping that, you get on a call with a potential and they're drilling you for all types of questions. How big, how small, how wide, how many images, how many, posts, are you going to have a blog, or you're just going to have, a podcast page? Is this just a podcast website, or is this a full blown, your entire business type of websites? Because people are breaking them apart nowadays. And then you want to ask them questions like the flexibility of the website, the capability of you managing it versus someone else, the length of time it's going to take for this person to develop it. What do they need from you? What do you need from them? Just kind of really just drill into it, just like you would any other type of service provider that might do work for you, maybe at your house, maybe on your person, or for your kids. Just really dig in, and definitely get multiple quotes, get multiple proposals, get multiple understandings of how these people communicate. A lot of these service providers, they're global. And so like right now, I just started working with someone who's in the Philippines. And I was woken up at 5 a.m. because it's 12 hours in advance. So it's 5 p.m. for them. That's not their fault. I just didn't even consider. So then we kind of just talked through, all right, so what are the working hours for both of us? Or if she's going to work off hours from me, then that's fine. Just make sure that the communication lines are open, and then decide kind of, how are you going to communicate? Is it going to be email? Is it going to be Vox? Is it going to be Loom? Is it going to be Messenger, text? So you definitely want to also get into where are they located, what are their hours, how many hours a week are they going to be working on you, on your project, how do they best communicate, how best do they track issues, so we can, also track resolutions to those issues. You want to get into all of it, okay? But for you first need to really consider what is it you want and need from your website. Now, the other last point I'll make is the number one thing you could do is when it comes to finding these individuals is you could put out a bulletin out onto Facebook, onto Twitter, onto nextdoor.com, onto LinkedIn, and ask. And also state in these posts that you're not expecting to hear from any website developers or whatever other service provider. But you're not looking for solicitations. You're looking for firsthand references and recommendations to individuals for you to then be able to trust the person's and the referrals that you're getting versus having to open up, Google and just trying to find it on your own, because that could be challenging as well. And there's just too many resources and too many forums and communities and post boards where you can actually, find recommendations from other people, so it can cut down a good amount of both your time and your due diligence. The due diligence still needs to be there. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, you can trust if several people recommend the same person. And then you can look for that person on LinkedIn, on Fiverr, on Upwork, on Facebook, and see where they're getting projects. So you can also look at reviews and ratings and that type of thing. Okay. All right. Let me take a glance around and see if there's any other types of comments or feedback. And let me see. And just know that at any point in time, if you do have a question, as I said, Ask Me Anything is the first Tuesday of every month. And basically, if you go out onto Facebook or Twitter, or even send me a direct email at Bernadette Boas at ballofireinc.com. Majority of my questions come through LinkedIn, a direct message through LinkedIn. So at any point in time, you send me a question or a story or a challenge, I'm going to respond to you immediately. But then I'll just pull all them together and bring them right here onto the first Tuesday of every month. And that's basically where we get our questions. So don't worry that if you're watching this in replay or listening to it on replay, that you lost the opportunity to get some help. Nope. You can still post your question or send me your question or challenge. Okay. All right. I think we're good. And let's see. Yeah, we're good. So for everybody here in the Shedding the Bitch community, brought to you by Ball of Fire Coaching, feel free to go out and learn more about what we do within not only Shedding the Bitch, but our Shift to Riches and Powerhouse Mavericks communities. Go to balloffirecoaching.com to do that. And I'll see you next Tuesday at noon Eastern time for another episode of Shedding the Bitch Radio. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thank you for taking part in Shedding the Bitch Radio and TV with Bernadette Boas. We would love to know what your biggest takeaway was. Go to Shedding the Bitch on Facebook or YouTube and leave a comment. You can also subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts and YouTube so you don't miss a single episode of the show. And with your input, we can help other powerhouse women just like you find the show and decide if it's right for them. Learn more about Bernadette at balloffirecoaching.com. See you next week. Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.